Have you ever felt like, you had to put on a brave face, wear a mask, hiding how you really felt underneath? That feeling, that sort of gap. That's really where we want to start today.
Yeah, we're diving into vulnerability. But not just the usual it's weakness idea. We want to explore how it might actually, lead to a more fulfilling life.
Right.
We'll be looking at some research, different perspectives, trying to unpack it.
And we know you appreciate getting straight to the point, getting solid insights without wading through fluff. So that's the plan.
Exactly. We've tried to boil down the key ideas to make this really valuable for your time.
And whether you're super familiar with these concepts or they're pretty new, we'll keep things clear. No jargon, just the core ideas that hopefully resonate.
Our aim is to really get under the skin of vulnerability, find some maybe surprising angles, and definitely offer takeaways you can actually think about, maybe even use.
Sometimes we get inspiration for deeper thinking from places like the YouTube channel Mindful Moments.
Oh.
It uses AI to analyze books, which is interesting, and it really encourages you to reflect, to engage critically with big ideas. So, let's jump in. Why is vulnerability so often painted as, negative?
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it, how common that view is, that vulnerability is some kind of liability.
Definitely.
Our sources really highlight this. People build up these emotional walls, almost like vulnerability is just inherently risky.
Exactly. That whole idea of putting on personal armor.
Mm-hmm.
But one of our main sources today, it offers a real challenge to that.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with this really powerful quote about, daring greatly, about getting in the arena, striving, even if you might fail.
Right.
It reframes vulnerability, not as defeat, but as the actual act of showing up authentically.
And that reframing is so crucial. The source connects this to living wholeheartedly. It suggests people with a strong sense of their own worth, they actually see vulnerability as vital.
Vital. How so?
Vital for courage, for compassion, for connection. It's not something blocking those things. It's apparently the foundation they're built on.
That feels almost like a paradox, doesn't it? We think strength is being like bulletproof.
Mm-hmm.
But this suggests real bravery comes from letting ourselves be seen, flaws and all. There's this bit in the book where someone calls vulnerability exquisite.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is such a contrast to how the author initially felt, which was more like excruciating. It really shows the range of how we experience it.
Which brings up a really important question. If it's so fundamental, why is it so incredibly hard for so many of us?
Good point.
The source digs into this. It suggests a lot of it comes down to, stuff we learned early on, messages from society, maybe even our families that teach us to fear uncertainty, fear emotional exposure.
The author even talks about their own experiences, developing these strategies as a kid to avoid feeling vulnerable, putting on different masks, different personas, as protection.
Mm-hmm. It really shows how we learn to shield ourselves, trying to avoid feeling exposed or not good enough.
And the kicker is these ways we try to protect ourselves, they often end up isolating us, right?
That's what the research indicates. A core human need is for love and belonging, connection.
Yeah.
And that connection, real connection, seems only possible when we're authentic, which by definition involves being vulnerable.
So trying to dodge vulnerability actually gets in the way of forming those deep connections we crave.
Yeah.
That seems central.
Exactly.
The source talks about people who do feel a strong sense of love and belonging. Apparently, they simply believe they're worthy of it.
Mm-hmm. And that sense of worthiness seems tied to accepting their vulnerability, not trying to pretend it doesn't exist.
Like a cycle then.
Yeah.
Fear vulnerability, hide, feel isolated, feel unworthy, fear vulnerability more.
Precisely. That seems to be the pattern. But the flip side is also true. Daring to be vulnerable opens the door to empathy, to connection.
Which then builds that feeling of worthiness.
Exactly. It reinforces itself in a positive way, too.
The source even mentions how this shows up at work, professionally. Like in academia, sometimes being detached, unemotional, that's seen as prestigious. Another kind of armor.
Right.
Makes you wonder how much genuine teamwork or new ideas get stifled because we value that distance over, vulnerability.
It really highlights how important daring greatly is across the board, not just in personal stuff, in meetings, creative work, tough conversations.
Even when it feels risky or uncomfortable.
Especially then, maybe? And as we dig deeper here, remember resources like Mindful Moments and, our discussions here. They offer great ways to keep exploring these themes.
Okay, so let's talk about how we shield ourselves.
Yeah.
Because the source gets really specific. One shield mentioned is foreboding joy. Does that ring a bell?
Oh, absolutely. That feeling when something good happens. And
Mhm.
instead of just enjoying it, your mind immediately jumps to, okay, when's the other shoe going to drop? Or you start picturing things going wrong.
Totally. The book explains it as a kind of defense mechanism against potential disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we don't let ourselves feel too happy, maybe it won't hurt as much if things go south.
But the research suggests that actually backfires. It just shrinks our capacity for joy and resilience.
It's like we're scared to fully embrace happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we feel we don't deserve it, or it's tempting fate somehow.
Right. And the antidote proposed, gratitude, actively noticing and appreciating the good right now, even knowing joy isn't permanent.
Makes sense. Okay, another big shield. Perfectionism.
Ah, yes. Classic.
And the source makes a really important distinction, doesn't it, between healthy striving and perfectionism.
It does. It highlights that perfectionism isn't really about achieving excellence for its own sake. It's driven by a deep fear of not being good enough. It's about seeking validation constantly.
It's that voice inside saying, you're only okay if you do everything perfectly.
That pressure.
Exactly. And it can be utterly paralyzing. It kills creativity, makes you afraid to even try sometimes.
There's that beautiful line quoted, there's a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in.
Mm-hmm. Such a great way to reframe imperfection. Not as failure, but as, well, human, as an opening for connection.
And then there's numbing, which isn't just about, substance abuse. No, the book broadens that concept significantly. It includes things like chronic busyness, always staying occupied to avoid feeling difficult emotion.
Right. Shopping, endless scrolling, workaholism.
All potential forms of numbing, but the crucial point is you can't selectively numb feelings. When you shut down the painful stuff, fear, shame, disappointment, you inevitably dull your ability to feel the positive stuff too. Joy, love, belonging, gratitude.
So what does all this mean for you listening right now?
Yeah.
Well, maybe that feeling of discomfort when you want to hide or project this image of perfect strength. Maybe that's a signal.
Mm-hmm. An invitation, perhaps, to look at whether the ways you're protecting yourself might actually be limiting your life, your connections.
It's a chance to ask yourself, maybe, how do I shield myself? When did I start doing that? What am I really afraid of underneath it all?
It's about self-examination, really, understanding our own patterns.
And maybe the most powerful idea to take away from all this is that vulnerability isn't the opposite of strength. It's actually the basis of courage, compassion, real human connection.
It's about having the courage to show up as you are, imperfections included.
Yeah. And a couple of key things to maybe hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
One is that feeling things, even the tough emotions, isn't weakness. It's human.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And embracing those feelings, letting ourselves be seen, even when it's uncomfortable, that seems to be the path towards living with that deep sense of worthiness we talked about.
So as you go about your day, maybe just notice, are there places you're holding back where maybe letting yourself be just a little more vulnerable could, counterintuitively, lead to more strength, deeper connections?
It's something to reflect on. And for more on these kinds of ideas, definitely check out resources like Mindful Moments. And of course, keep tuning into our conversations here.
Engaging with the source material directly is also highly recommended if this sparks your interest.
Absolutely. Get the full picture.
And if you found this useful, please do subscribe so you don't miss our future explorations.
Yeah, share it with someone else who might find it valuable too.
If there's a link available, you might consider grabbing the source material yourself.
Okay.
But really, the most important thing,
Mm-hmm.
take a moment to think critically about these ideas.
Mm-hmm.
How do they land with you?
Mm-hmm.
In your own life, what does daring greatly actually look like?